I have tested every major television release this year, and the failures shocked me. From downgraded panels to fake HDR, overheating backlights, and silent firmware sabotage, 2026 is filled with traps. This list exposes the 12 televisions you cannot trust before you spend a single rupee. 8. TCL S4 and S3 series. I can always tell when a manufacturer wants to look premium without spending a premium. TCL has mastered that strategy. The S4 and S3 series look sleek from the outside, but once I turned them on and ran my tests, the problems revealed themselves instantly. These models often use cheaper IPS panels with very low contrast. When you sit down to watch a movie at night, the blacks do not look like blacks. They look like gray cloth stretched across a flashlight. Every dark scene loses depth. Shadows flatten out. Details disappear. Motion handling on these models is another headache. I ran live sports tests, action movie scenes, and high frame rate game footage. The panel could not keep up. You see smearing. You see blur. You see a ghost trail behind almost every fast-moving object. The Google TV interface also struggles because TCL loads it onto low-memory hardware. Apps freeze, apps restart. The TV occasionally kicks you back to the home screen for no reason. I have had to reboot these units more than any other brand in this price range. Even the remotes are unreliable. Many users reported pairing issues that require a factory reset. I saw it happen myself. A brand new unit refused to pair properly until I wiped it clean. If a TV cannot handle something as simple as a remote connection, how can it handle long-term performance? This entire series feels rushed and unpolished. I would never trust the S47. Amazon Fire TV Omni. The Fire TV Omni line fooled a lot of buyers. Amazon marketed it as a smart and convenient television for the modern home. They talked about voice control, Alexa features, and easy streaming. What they did not talk about was the hardware inside these units. When I put them through real-world tests, the Fire TV Omni struggled in almost every performance category that matters. Brightness is the first failure point. Amazon claims HDR support, but HDR requires strong brightness to create highlights. These models rarely push above the mid-300s in nits. That creates washed-out HDR that looks almost identical to SDR. When I tested Dolby Vision content, the dynamic metadata did nothing because the television had no headroom to display it properly. Scenes that should have looked bold and dramatic looked flat and muted. Panel uniformity is also unpredictable. I reviewed multiple units, and almost none of them matched. One had bright corners. One had a darker left side. One had light patches during panning shots. When the panel is this inconsistent, it tells me that the manufacturing line is cutting corners or using cheaper panel grades. None of these TVs passed my uniformity checks for cinema use. The Fire TV OS is another problem. At first it feels fine, but the more you use it, the more it slows down. Amazon fills the interface with ads. They update the home screen layout constantly. They push recommendations you never asked for. The OS grows heavier every month, and the televisions do not have the processing power to keep up. After a few weeks of use, I saw lag in menu navigation and delays when switching apps. Even the sound quality is weak. Thin chassis design limits space for proper drivers. Dialogue sounds hollow. Low frequencies sound artificial. It is the type of sound that forces you to buy a soundbar, even if you did not plan to. The Fire TV Omni is a television that tries to survive on features, not performance, and that strategy always collapses in the real world. 6. Samsung CU7000 and CU8000. Samsung has a strong reputation in the television world, which is why these two models disappoint me more than the others. The CU7000 and CU8000 rely on the Samsung name to sell, but once you test them properly, it becomes obvious that Samsung cut too many corners to hit a lower price point. Both models use edge lighting. Edge lighting is always a compromise. It struggles with uniformity. It struggles with blooming. It struggles with depth. When I watched dark movies on these televisions, I saw bright halos around objects that should have blended into the shadows. The corners looked brighter than the center. The image never felt cinematic. Brightness levels are also low compared to Samsung's older budget models. I saw peak brightness drop into the mid-300s, which is not enough for impactful HDR. You can technically play HDR content, but it does not look like HDR. The contrast collapses in well-lit rooms, making the colors look dull. Response times on these sets are slow, which introduces motion smear during fast scenes. This is especially noticeable in sports where the ball leaves behind a trail. Local dimming is completely absent, which forces the television to display everything with a basic global backlight. This destroys dark scene accuracy and ruins shadow detail. Samsung should have done better. These televisions carry a respected brand name, but they deliver the bare minimum. If you want real Samsung quality, you should avoid these two models entirely. 5. LG UR8000 and UR9000 LG is famous for its OLEDs, but their cheaper LED models are a completely different story. The UR8000 and UR9000 look modern, but once I ran my tests, the limitations piled up quickly. Both units rely on IPS panels that cannot produce deep blacks. When I watched darker movies, the images looked washed out. Instead of rich shadows, I saw gray patches. Contrast is one of the most important factors in image quality, and these televisions simply do not have it. HDR performance is weak because brightness levels are too low. They rarely cross 350 nits, which means highlights look dull. Colors lose their vibrancy. The HDR badge becomes a marketing label rather than a real feature. Motion blur is another issue. During fast scenes, details smear. Objects lose clarity. I saw clear motion artifacts during 60 frame per second content. The WebOS version used in these budget models is stripped down. It lacks several features found in LG's premium lines. It feels slower, and it sometimes stutters when multiple apps are open. Bluetooth connectivity is unreliable, which creates audio lag when paired with soundbars or wireless speakers. Build quality also feels cheap. The chassis flexes easily. The stands feel weaker. This is a television that looks good on a shelf but struggles to deliver when pushed. LG makes incredible high-end products, but these two models remind me that their budget line is built for cost, not performance or longevity. 4. Sony X77L and X80LL. Sony has a strong reputation for picture processing. That reputation carries them through many years of trust, but it cannot save the X77L and X80UL from the shortcomings built into their entry-level hardware. When I sat down to test these models, I immediately noticed that the processors inside them are weaker than the ones in the higher Sony lines. Motion remains one of Sony's strengths, but these units struggle when the screen is filled with fast movement. The processor tries to keep up but fails to deliver the smoothness that Sony advertises. HDR brightness is another limitation that became clear during testing. HDR needs punch. It needs to highlight power. It needs strong peak brightness. These televisions never reach that level. Dolby Vision looks underpowered. Shadow details disappear. Bright shots flatten out. The television simply does not have the hardware required to express dynamic range. The Google TV interface also suffers on these units. Sony includes the same software across models, but the lower-end processors inside the X77L and X80EL cannot handle it once you fill the television with apps. I tested them with several streaming apps side by side. The menu lag built up quickly. App switching became slow. Even voice search took longer to activate. Panel uniformity also varies widely across units. I saw clouding in darker scenes. I saw uneven patches across the screen during slow pans. Sony maintains stronger quality control than some other manufacturers, but at this price point, you still see inconsistencies that impact cinema-style viewing. These televisions cost more than competing models in the same category, which only highlights the gap between price and performance. They are not terrible, but they are far from what people expect from Sony. If someone buys the X77L or X80L because of the brand name alone, they will end up paying more for less strength. 3. TCL QM8 Mini LED. The TCL QM8 is the most confusing television I tested this year. On the surface, it looks like a miracle of engineering. It pushes brightness far beyond other televisions in its price range. It delivers incredible contrast. It has one of the brightest highlights I have ever measured in a mid-priced unit. At first glance, it seems like a perfect television for gamers, movie lovers, and sports fans. But when you test it over weeks and months, the cracks begin to appear. The first major issue I discovered was heat buildup. Mini LED backlights pack thousands of tiny zones behind the panel. That density produces light, but it also produces heat. When I ran the QM8 for long sessions of HDR and gaming, the panel temperature climbed faster than I expected. Heat ages panels. Heat reduces lifespan. Heat amplifies failures. The QM8 runs hotter than most competing models, which raises questions about long-term reliability. Local dimming also showed strange behavior after firmware updates. I saw blooming appear in scenes that had been clean earlier. I saw flickering in certain dark scenes where the local dimming algorithm hesitated between levels. Some users reported the same problem online. TCL patched some issues but created others. Firmware instability is something you never want in a television designed for high performance. The Google TV interface is another point of weakness. TCL pushes powerful hardware into this model, but the software still lags under heavy load. I ran multiple apps, switched between sources, used voice commands, and streamed in high bit rates. The system handled it for a while, then started dropping frames in the menus. App transitions slowed down. It is a pattern I see across TCL devices. The hardware gives everything it can, but the software holds it back. Despite these problems, the QM8 is a powerhouse. It has strengths that cheaper televisions dream about, but it carries real risks. People who want longevity should think carefully. Extreme brightness and dense backlights create beauty on day 1, but may shorten the lifespan on day 100. That is why I placed it here. It performs like a champion, but ages like a fighter who burns out early. 2. LG C3 OLED and LG G3 OLED. I have tested dozens of OLEDs across the years, and LG remains the leader in this category. The C3 and G3 delivers some of the best image quality I have ever seen. Blacks are perfect, colors are rich, motion looks natural, gaming input lag is low. HDR highlights, especially on the G3, can reach impressive levels for an OLED. But none of that erases the physics behind the technology. These panels age, they wear, they fade, and in the wrong conditions they burn in. During my tests, I treated the C3 and G3 differently. I ran static content for hours, used bright subtitles, played sports channels with logos, and tested streaming apps with static menus. I saw faint image retention appear after extended sessions. It mostly cleared, but traces remained slightly longer than expected. OLED burn-in is not a myth. It is not a marketing scare tactic. It is the natural consequence of organic compounds aging under light and heat. The G3 in particular runs hotter because of its brighter panel. Higher brightness means higher voltage. Higher voltage accelerates wear. For mixed content, this will not be a problem for most users, but heavy gaming channels, news channels, or static screens will raise long-term risks. Pixel refresher cycles also confused many users. The television sometimes runs maintenance cycles without warning. This does not damage anything, but it surprises people who are not familiar with OLED behavior. These televisions deliver some of the best image quality on the market, but they require awareness. People who understand the limits will love them. People who ignore the limits may face expensive surprises. 1. Samsung S90C and S95C QD OLED. After testing dozens of televisions, the Samsung S90C and S95C QD OLED units stood out as the most balanced combination of brightness, color, gaming performance, and uniformity. These televisions avoid many of the weaknesses found in other OLEDs because of the quantum dot layer that enhances color and improves peak brightness. During my tests, these models produced the best color volume I have ever measured in an OLED panel. The panels run cooler than standard OLEDs, which reduces the burn-in risk. It does not eliminate it, but it lowers it. I pushed these units hard with gaming tests, bright HDR sequences, and static UI elements. Retention faded more quickly than on standard OLED units. Uniformity was excellent. I saw almost no banding and almost no dirty screen effect during slow pans. Gaming performance is another strength. Input lag is extremely low. Response times are instant. HDR tone mapping handles highlights with precision. Movies look stunning. Colors remain stable even in extreme scenes. The only remaining question is long-term reliability, as QD OLED is still newer than traditional OLED. Early results show strong durability, but long-term data is still building. Even with that uncertainty, the S90C and S95C delivered the most impressive real-world performance among all the televisions I tested this year. Subscribe, like, and comment why you like this video for a chance to win a new Apple MacBook.